Before we dive too deeply into creating publications and working with existing publications in Publisher 2007, we need to talk about the various options you have at your fingertips. There are certain default settings that you need to know about because you have full control over those default settings. In other words, we can set up our environment and our options to work exactly the way we need them to that best suits us. For example, here in this particular business card publication here, you can see the ruler across the top and down the left-hand side is set to inches. That's the units of measure that is set up by default during my installation. Now, I can change that to something else if I wanted to. When I start a new blank publication, it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's portrait, another default that can be altered. Maybe you're typing away in a publication and you misspell a word and you go back to fix it and it's already been fixed for you. That's an autocorrect option that's set up for you in the background. It's a default, but it too can be altered. So that's what we're going to do now before we move on to creating and working with publications. We find all of these options under the Tools menu. So come up to Tools up here, give it a click, and go towards the bottom of this menu because I want to show you three different links we're going to go to. We've got autocorrect options, we've got customize, and then we have options itself down here. So let's start with autocorrect options. Give that one a click. Now, if you've used any of the other applications in the Microsoft Office suite, then you know what autocorrect does. There's two tabs here, autocorrect and auto format, and anything with a check in the checkbox is currently turned on. So if we look at this first one here, correct two initial capitals, that means if you accidentally hold the shift key down for too long when you're trying to capitalize a word and the first two characters get capitalized, it will be corrected for you as you move on to the next word. The second letter in that word will go back to lowercase. Capitalized first letter of sentences is something that may be turned on for you. I've turned it off in another application, so this particular setting crosses over the various applications in Microsoft Word. So what I have and what you see may be different. I turn this one off because sometimes when I use abbreviations and I use the period for an abbreviation, well, the application, in this case Publisher, thinks that the next word should be capitalized because it's the beginning of a sentence. Well, it's often not the case, and I don't like to have to go back and fix that, so I've deselected the checkbox by clicking inside it to remove the check mark. Capitalize first letter of table cells is a default. The names of the day, if I forget to capitalize Wednesday, it'll get a W. Correct accidental use of caps lock key. I love this one. I always keep it on. If you've got your caps lock key on, maybe it's a title you're typing, and then you forget to turn it off as you move into the paragraph, and you start typing away, and you hit shift to capitalize the first letter in the first word, and it's lowercase and everything else is uppercase. Well, with this turned on, before you know it, Publisher would figure out, hey, that's a mistake, and switch everything around for you. You just continue typing like nothing ever happened. I like that one. Replace text as you type is this full section right here. And all that means is that there are certain commonly made mistakes down below in the replace column. And then we have a with field over here on the right hand side that shows what the mistake is replaced with. For example, and it's not always a mistake. Here for the copyright symbol, you can see we've got a small c in round brackets. If you were to type that in Publisher or any other application in the Office suite for that matter, the copyright symbol will replace it when you move on to the next word. Same thing for register, trademark, and then we get into some of the typos down below. So if you've tried to type about and you've got two B's in there, one will be removed for you. If you get the letters mixed up a little bit, it'll fix it for you as well. You forget the space about A, well, it will put the space in for you. And you can see there's quite a long list. It's all alphabetical. One that I know is often made is that I before E except after C rule. So if I type in receive and I do I-E-V-E, you can see it is on the list down here. So whenever I type R-E-C-I-E-V-E, it will be replaced with receive with the E-I-V-E at the end. Now the neat thing about the replace text as you type section is you can actually add your own entries. For example, Eat Cake Patisserie is the name of our fictitious company. Well, we might have to type that an awful lot in the various publications we create in Publisher. So what we might want to do is come into the replace field here, just click and drag over whatever's there, and type in ECP. I'm going to type it in lowercase because I would never use that in my publications. In the width field, I would type it out in full, Eat Cake Patisserie, and then I come down here and click Add. So it gets added alphabetically to the E's. You can see it shows up here after Eclair. Now every time I type ECP in lowercase here, I will see Eat Cake Patisserie show up in its place. So that's a nice time saver. So it works well for shortcuts, it works well for typos, and it works well here for saving you some time and effort. Anytime you want to remove one, you just simply go to the list, click on it, and hit the delete key. Notice also we have a check mark here for automatically use suggestions from the spelling checker. So that's another option that will show up as you're typing. You'll see a list of options from the spell checker. Alright, we also have an auto format as you type tab, and you can see some of the things that are turned on here, like straight quotes are replaced with smart quotes. So the straight quotes that you get by holding down shift and the apostrophe on your keyboard will be rounded at the beginning, rounded in, and rounded out at the end. Hyphens, so when you use two dashes, are replaced with a long dash. That's kind of nice. And then apply as you type. These are options you may choose to turn off. You may or may not like this. Automatic bulleted and numbered lists. So if you're in a document and you're typing and you type in the number 1, maybe you hit your tab key to leave some space and type. As soon as you hit enter, a 2 is going to appear for you. You may or may not like that. That's because this is turned on, and you can turn these off easy enough just by doing that. Alright, so we'll click OK, and that covers our autocorrect options. Let's go back up to Tools now and come down to Customize. I want to go over these too. Under the Customize dialog box, we've got Toolbars, Commands, and Options. So toolbars here, you see on the list with check marks, are the toolbars that show up on your screen by default. We're talking about customizing your user interface at this point. So here's my standard toolbar. You can see I've got a formatting toolbar checked off here, and that's it right here down below. You can see connect text boxes. That's showing up here as well. So that little toolbar. I've got a menu bar. That's File, Edit, View. I've got the Objects toolbar, or the toolbox, over here on the left. The task pane. All of these are turned on by default. So you can turn any of them off, like the task pane, for example, see how it disappears, or turn them on by clicking the checkbox. WordArt is a toolbar. You can see when I select it, it becomes what we call a floating toolbar, and I can move a toolbar. You can see as I move towards the task pane here, it just got anchored. I can move it up to the top as well, and you can see now it shows up here with my other toolbars. Turning it off means deselecting it here from the list of toolbars. You can also create your own toolbars by clicking New. You get a new blank toolbar, and then you can just borrow buttons from other toolbars if you want to. Under the Commands tab, you can see here's where we get a list of all of those commands that you might want to add to a toolbar. So if you created a new toolbar and you want the close button on it, well, you just simply click and drag it to that toolbar. Now if you want the close button on your standard toolbar, that works too, because you see we've got a new, open, and save. We don't have close. So if we click and drag close and drop it right in between our open and our save button, we now have a close button on our toolbar. So these commands, and you can see they're all listed here by the same headings that we see on the menu bar, can be selected and dragged to any toolbar that you see here on your screen. Of course, when we're in this mode, we can come in here and take buttons off as well. And when we see the X next to our pointer like we do right here, it means we're going to be removing it from a toolbar. So all of your commands fall under the Commands tab here, which means you can go get anything that you feel is missing from a toolbar and put it there. The Options tab shows you some of the options for your UI, like show standard and formatting toolbars on 2 rows. So my standard and my formatting toolbars are separated, and because they're quite lengthy, you do want them on 2 rows, so that should stay checked. Always show full menus. I like that one. Now, if I turn this off, it means when I go up to the File menu and I click File, I may not see every option on the File menu. What I may see is my most frequently used commands on the file menu, and then I have to wait for a delay before the full menu appears. I always come in and turn that one on. I don't like waiting or having to click the arrows at the bottom of a menu to see all of the options on that menu. So that's up to you as well. Down here we can also select large icons if we prefer. You can see what happens. Easier to see, a little blurry, not much room to work with down below. So I'm going to turn large icons off. List font names in their font. So as we go through the list of fonts, we see their names as well as the actual font that's being used to display that name. Show screen tips on the toolbar, so as we hover over buttons. Now right now we're in the customize mode, so we don't see it, but we could hover over the scissors and we would see a tooltip showing up saying that that is the cut button. I like that, and I also like to show the shortcut keys in the screen tip so I know if I prefer to use the keyboard what that shortcut is. Now each of these options takes up a little bit more memory, a little more of your system resources, so if you're trying to speed things up, these are good ones to turn off. So we'll click close here, and we'll go to the last one on the tools menu right at the very bottom and click options. Here you can see in the option we got general, edit, user assistant, save, and web options. So there's our units of measure, inches, and that's why my rulers show up with inches. But you can see from the drop down I could switch to centimeters. If you're working in Europe or in Canada, you might want to have metric units showing up. Picas, points, and pixels can also be used. If you're working heavily with graphics, those are good measurements to use. Show basic colors in the color palette. Right now when we go to change colors, we're going to see a huge color palette, more than just the basic colors. But if we wanted to only use basic colors, we would check this box off. I'm going to leave it unchecked. Show publication types when starting Publisher as well. That's that getting started screen that we see every time we launch Publisher. I kind of like having that show up. If you don't like it, just simply deselect this checkbox. Let's go to the Edit tab now, and you can see when we're editing text some of the options, like we have the ability to do drag and drop text editing. So if we highlight a sentence, we can click and drag that entire highlighted or selected sentence to another location just by clicking and dragging. This is called drag and drop. Now again, it takes up some more system resources if you like to use that, so consider that when you check or uncheck this checkbox. When we're selecting, so when we're clicking and dragging with our mouse to select text, you'll notice that as we start to slide across a word, the entire word gets selected for us. So we can't select portions or pieces of a word. I personally don't like that, so I like to deselect that. When formatting, automatically format the entire word, so you can click anywhere in a word, go up to the bold button, the entire word will be bolded. Prompt for update styles is one that's not turned on, but styles can be updated, and if you want that prompting you each time you use styles, think about that. Automatically substitute fonts for missing East Asian characters. If you're using them, you'll get font substitution automatically if you don't have them installed. That's not a bad idea. Show paste options buttons, so when you go to your paste button, there's actually a little drop down various paste options. You want to paste plain text or HTML text, etc. Hyphenation is also automatically turned on, so automatically hyphenate in new text boxes. We use a lot of text boxes in Publisher, so when text needs to wrap around in smaller boxes, you may want hyphens being used as opposed to the entire word being wrapped around to the next line. And then you can choose the hyphenation zone. So how close it comes to the margin, and you can see a 1/4 inch before hyphenation is turned on. This one down here I kind of like too. Arrow keys can be used to move objects or nudge them around on the screen. So if we click this checkbox, we can actually choose with each tap of the key how far an object is nudged or moved. And you can see the default here for me is 0.13 inches. I'm going to just knock that down to 0.1. So 10 taps of the right arrow key would move my object a full inch to the right. User assistance is an option too, so when you're seeing those tips that show up, like screen tips on objects, show underline for merge fields and business information fields. These are little tips that kind of help you as you're working along in the various publications. Same thing goes for wizards. Using a wizard for blank publications, it's going to take you step by step through the creation of that publication. The Save tab. Allow background saves so that your documents or your publications can be saved while you're working on them. And then you've got auto recover as well. So every 10 minutes you can see by default my publication is being saved up in an area outside of my regular documents area on my hard drive, so I can access that if I need to recover because of something like a power outage or a disk crash. Then we've got the web tab as well, and you can see when we're saving to web formats, and we can create web pages with Publisher. You can see we'll have the supporting files in a folder when we publish something to the web. That's kind of good. Keeps everything neat and organized in its own folder. Enable incremental publish to the web, so we're able to publish to the web in pieces. That's not a bad idea. Allow PNG as the graphics format. Now this is not checked off, but if you wanted to, keep in mind that you need Explorer 6.0 or later when you select this format to view your website. We've also got encoding options and email options down below. When you email a publication, it can be emailed as an image, a JPEG image. You can see if this is checked off. This allows anyone with older versions of email to see what you've created. Now keep in mind that it becomes one image and it's a much larger file size than just sending your publication. Alright, to save any changes you may have made, you need to click the OK button. Now we have the environment that we need, so our user interface, our default options are set for us, meaning that as we work in Publisher now going forward, everything's going to work the way we need it to work, and that best suits our environment.